Hello and welcome to the Business of Story. I'm your host, Park Howell, and we are kicking off year 6 of our show. And I'm so glad you're here to do that with me. You know what startup marketing guru Greg Head of Scaling Point said about our new ABTs of Selling course? Well, I'll tell you, and I quote, "There's something really powerful that sits in between general marketing messages and specific sales conversations. That's the ABT narrative framework. The ABT is where marketing meets sales to create action with marketing and enable salespeople to tell powerful stories to larger groups." Thanks for that, Greg. Here's another one. Copywriter Luke Pesic said, quote, "This was awesome. It's an easier and broader way to write copy and will definitely be applied to ads, emails, and landing pages. In fact, I just used it in a video script. Amazing." And finally, Diana writes, "Hello, Park. Diana at Forever Living Products UK here, inspired by your many talks at Forever Events. Oh my God, I can see the ABT structure in everything we do. Talking to customers, prospects, on the phone, in Facebook messages, everywhere. This training is bloody brilliant." Well, now you can take the ABTs of Selling course too. Just go to businessofstory.thinkific.com to put the ABT to work for you. This new quick course is only $35 and will make you a more confident and compelling communicator to make your marketing memorable, your presentations more penetrating, your emails more engaging, and your sales roar. Check it out at businessofstory.thinkific.com and gain a decided advantage in your sales and marketing storytelling. Today, we're going to have the former producer of the Mori show, a guy who spent 20 years behind the camera and has been featured as a photography expert on several NBC Universal daytime and reality shows. He's here to share what kinds of photos you should be using to sell yourself and your business. And you might be surprised that they're not always your professional headshots or that picture of you wowing an audience that make the most impact.
We wanted to show that emotional range from being vulnerable all the way up to being victorious and everything in between, because those are the stories that you share with your audience. You don't just share sunshine and rainbows all day. And as a result, your photos need to reflect those stories.
John Damato is a visual story expert who collaborates with speakers, trainers, consultants, and business leaders to create image content that captures your audience's attention through artistry and emotion. John isn't simply a photographer, he actually thinks like a marketer. He sets clients up for success beyond the photo sessions by educating them on how to leverage their portraits, book images, virtual and live event photos across their entire online presence. Today, John shares tips on how to capture your best headshots, why you should share pictures of what it looks like to be you in your day-to-day activities, how not to come off as a zombie by presenting your best self in virtual sessions, and the need for visual variety in your business storytelling. So please welcome to the Business of Story, John Damato. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Park. Good to be here.
Where are you coming to us from?
I am coming to you from Astoria, Queens, New York.
Astoria, Queens, New York.
That is correct. I want to make sure that part is a part of this conversation. Yes.
And why is that?
Well, I'm actually born and raised in this neighborhood in the Long Island City, Astoria area, and it has some significance to me. So I always like to make that distinction.
Ah, well, that's nice. I am coming to you from Phoenix, Arizona, down here in my somewhat echoey conference room in our building down here, because I now live up in northern Arizona, but had just got back from visiting my 96-year-old wonderful mother in Woodinville, Washington. Now, I always say Seattle because people know Seattle, but Woodinville is just north of there, and that's where I grew up, Bothell, Woodinville area. So like Astoria, I'm proud of my Bothell, Woodinville area too.
There you go. See, I like that.
Today, We're going to talk about visual storytelling, but maybe in a little bit different way than I've covered it before. So I always like to ask the question, John, what is the one big problem we're going to solve for our listeners today that you're going to help them with?
Well, today, the problem that we are going to solve is how to present yourself as an expert that you are, because I serve speakers, authors, trainers, consultants, people like that. And the problem that they have is getting in front of the people that need them the most, but not just getting in front of them in a way that's going to inspire them to captivate their attention enough to learn about how you, the expert, can solve their problems.
So it's getting in front of them in traditional channels, social media, outreach, that kind of thing. But you're talking about more of the photography, the imagery that we use on our websites. And well, really, let's start with the website because that's the first place everybody goes to proof us out, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the thing about the images, one of the big things that images serve in terms of how you market and promote yourself is to be able to bring those words, that copy, all of that expertise that you put within your website come to life by complementing the sentiment of those words through the visuals, and specifically through the emotional sentiment, meaning conveyed through their facial expressions, their body language. And then when you layer on the activities in front of the camera, that helps create a certain punctuation to whatever words those images are next to.
What do you mean the activities in front of the camera?
Part of what I do with my clients is understand who they are, who they serve, the problems they solve, how they solve them, and why they do what they do, right? So part of that involves revealing what your processes are to do all of those things. Working on a laptop, working on a phone, a tablet, handwriting, journaling, working one-on-one with clients, working in a room with a client, working virtually. All of these different things help convey not just a sense of this is what I do, I'm telling you what I do, which is what the copy serves, but the photos are more of this is what it looks like. Come along with me on my journey as I show you how I'm going to solve your problems and why I am the authority in this particular space.
Now, I learned about you through our mutual good friend, Alice Hyman. And I believe you've been doing some work for her. And when she showed me your work, I was struck by it being more about capturing the imagery of the person long distance. I mean, because we're all in the virtual world these days. So you have been taking photos of Alice and other clients of yours presenting online, and you are sitting back in Astoria, Queens, presumably in your studio there, taking pictures of the video screen of them presenting.
That's correct. Yeah. Never thought I was going to be doing that.
Well, obviously you did a major pivot once COVID hit, because I imagine all your in-person shooting went virtual as well.
Oh, yeah. All of my in-person work went bye-bye within the span of 3 days. And I was kind of stuck holding the bag trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do with my business. And I work with the National Speakers Association. And in particular, I'm a photography sponsor for the New York City chapter. And in April of last year, they went virtual. And I simply signed on just so that I could see some familiar faces, because I was actually getting over having COVID myself and I wasn't exactly feeling 100%. And I just wanted to see my friends on the screen. And about 3 to 5 minutes within that, watching the initial part of the program starting, I'm like, I got to do something. So I went to grab my camera and I just started shooting the screen. And the next thing you know, I'm posting about it the next day. And a couple of people who I photographed during that virtual event shared it. And from those shares, that's literally where it started. I didn't have some masterful moment, like an aha moment where, oh, I'm going to do this because they're going there and I'm going to be on top of the game. No, I just wanted to feel useful and I just wanted to share the meeting, and that's how it started.
Wow. And you've done a lot of these since then, but before we get into what goes into actually trying to capture a meaningful image when someone is halfway around the world on Zoom,
Yeah.
how did you give us your backstory? How did you find yourself in this position of shooting photography and now shooting on Zoom?
Yeah. Well, Park, once upon a time, I was a television producer who worked on the Mori show, which, for those not familiar, it's a talk show that deals with a lot of, well, to put it mildly, heavy emotional trauma in people's lives. And after doing that for a couple of years, I started to notice that I was getting a little bit burned out. And I started looking for other jobs in TV, and there was nothing that really was a fit. But there was one thing that I came up with that I felt a little more creative and I had more control over the work that I was doing. And that was with still photography. I took a class in grad school and it was the best class I had ever taken. But then I kind of forgot about it. Fast forward 5 years, I pick up the camera again, started shooting on the weekends, started out as a headshot photographer. And then in 2013, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And during that whole progression, it was over the course of a couple of months. I had a moment where I was in the hospice, sitting bedside with her, and she couldn't talk or anything. But I just kept thinking to myself, if I were in her position right now, the amount of regrets that I would have about the life I led and what I've kind of given up for this stable TV job would have been too much to bear. So a couple months later, I decided to get a little crazy, jump out the window, start my own thing. That's how it began.
Yeah, and you've been doing this for 8 years, you said?
It'll be 8 years in August. Yeah. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
almost at the 8 year mark. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a
Yeah.
little bit about Maury Povich show, right? That's the show you're
Correct.
talking about that you were the producer on. So in that, you saw a lot of histrionics going on, throwing of chairs, crazy people and whatever. Did that teach you something about how to capture that unique person inside an individual who is sitting across from your 35 millimeter lens?
Absolutely. We were a lot closer than 35 millimeters. I mean, I would have that camera like 3 inches away as soon as I anticipated a tear rolling down that cheek. It was pretty intense, some of the places I've been and what I saw. But what it really taught me and what sticks with me, actually, a couple of things, but right at the top of the list is the power of telling story through emotion. It is an absolutely essential element for anyone that's trying to build a community of advocates and clients, or whatever you're trying to build. And not just the power of it, but how to access it, how to direct people of a wide range of personalities. That's another aspect that I learned while working on the show and doing thousands of interviews behind a camera with a wide assortment of the human condition in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the other key elements that I learned while being a producer in the field, doing these interviews and shooting all of these pieces, is the power of visual variety. It's not enough to just get one angle of someone and kind of get that, and I'm specifically talking about B-roll. You get that one shot, it's great, but it's not enough. You need to get stuff that from different angles and different perspectives and wide, medium, close-up shots, because it's that visual variety that will keep people's attention. So those three things are what really carried over and still influences the work I do with experts today in a much, much, much more serene and positive way.
Well, I'm going to go down just a bit of a rabbit hole because I'm fascinated, and the universe has delivered this to me. So 2 days ago, up in Seattle, and I was sitting with some good old buddies from high school and got together for dinner and catching up. And one of them, he and his wife had to deal with extreme addiction with their daughters, and they've written a book about it, and it'll be coming out in a couple of months about, as a parent, how do you deal with this addiction? First, a psychological weird addiction that their daughter thought she was like this celebrity, and she wasn't. And this was even before the days of influencers and whatever. And then somehow she was able to use this to get into bars when she was really underage, but very attractive, which then led to harder stuff. And they went through this unbelievable nightmare of this addiction and got her cleaned up and fine. They were invited on the Dr. Phil show. And the father said, I'm not going, but the mother said, we need to tell this story. And they had a horrific experience on the Dr. Phil show, which he details in his book, and just some of the fabrication of it. And I was sort of shocked, but maybe shouldn't have been shocked. And anyway, so when you were talking about the Mori show, did you find yourself in those same sort of situations that you had to kind of fabricate some emotion to really make it work? Or was it just asking the right questions and getting the people in the right mindset, and they just kind of blow up on their own for the cameras?
It's the latter. It's not the former. The show doesn't put words in people's mouths. It takes their stories from their pre-interviews and basically puts it into maybe cleaner English, and then we allow people to then share it in that way. But in terms of the tears, they're real. In terms of the emotions, they're real. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's they're not on the show because they won the lottery. So they do have that understanding that this thing can go sideways very, very quickly the moments whatever the results of whatever their test that they're on there for is revealed. So it's a tough business. There's no doubt about it, and there is collateral damage. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Did you feel when you were at your mom's side as she was rounding out her life that you felt like that this was not the best use of your talent, or was there even a bit of a soul sucking going on with that, producing that kind of content, and you wanted to do something on a brighter stage?
You know what it is? It was one of these things where it's both, actually. There was a part of me that knew that I had more to give, and I didn't know what it was at the time. And it was very frustrating because I was getting a lot of no's and a lot of doors slammed and potential opportunities. But really, really what it was is all about the sense of regret that if I don't pursue something that actually has meaning, where maybe instead of trying to be the goal always related to ratings and numbers and all of that stuff, which is, it's a television show. That's just the way life is. And I knew that what I signed up for. But at the same time, there was this thought in the back of my mind that I feel like it would be much more valuable to my time if I could actually do something that helps people help other people while still doing the thing that I do. And, fortunately, this opportunity to serve experts presented itself through a client, and it happened very organically. So I'm very lucky.
And you had this interest in photography, so you started doing this on your own. It's kind of interesting now that you look at what you've been doing during COVID and coming out of that, is this intersection of producing people on TV so they look good, but now capturing their spirit in a unique way that they can use this imagery to go out and build their business and help other people.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, especially at the very beginning of this, when we all didn't know what was going on, there was this need for speakers to be able to prove to meeting planners and other event producers and companies, the go-to people who are booking speakers and trainers, that the people that are going to be on the screen actually know what they're doing, that they've done this before. And that's really what necessitated the need for what I was doing. And to a larger degree, when we're talking about just promoting yourself naturally on social, the need for these types of images arise because, again, it's one thing to say that you're a virtual speaker, but you have to show them what it looks like. And that's the whole point of the virtual. It's to give your audience the opportunity to pull themselves up right to their screen and get that sense of what that experience of learning from that person looks like, so that the visualization, the ability to close the gap between maybe this is someone that we want to have in front of our people to, let's get this person on the phone and lock them up before they're unavailable. That's the point. It helps bridge that gap.
So when you were shooting this, I would imagine that you've got some limitations, obviously, because you're shooting your screen of them presenting from their screen. How do you mix it up and make it interesting? You're doing this for a lot of different people. How do you not make those images all look the same?
Well, the backgrounds are similar because my studio is my home apartment, so that's what that is. What creates the visual variety is not so much, okay, he's shooting by the window in his bedroom again, okay, by the French doors, okay, now he's against the wall in the kitchen. At this point, I think I have the most famous apartment in the speaker industry because I'm in all their photos. but really, the juice to these photos is the same juice that you get from a shot when you're on a stage in front of 1,000 people. It's your facial expression, it's your body language, it's everything. It's the slide that you're using that's behind you. Now, obviously, it's not on a monster rear view projector screen. It's a slide that's side by side on the screen, but that's what creates that variety because it's their expression. And also, when I'm shooting clients, sometimes, their audiences are all different. Some people do one-on-ones. Some people only do like masterminds. It's not always a keynote in front of hundreds of people. Some people use slides. Some people use digital whiteboards. Some people really rely on the chat box. Some don't. Either way, what happens before we shoot is I have a strategy session with the client and find out what are their unique wrinkles in how they present themselves virtually, what's important to them, what do they want to impress upon their audience about how they deliver their IP, and we make sure that we nail it during the session.
So you really bring a producer mindset to this.
All day, every day, my friend. You could take the producer out of the show, but it never leaves you. It never leaves you, no.
All right. Well, on that, what are some producing tips that you can offer? And then we're going to talk a little bit more about this visual storytelling. So
Sure.
I do a lot of work like everybody on virtual. What are some of the tips you would provide to help us become better at this?
Well, the first thing would be to always make sure that your camera is at eye level. One of the things that drives me absolutely insane is when they're using a webcam and it's shooting up their nose. It just feels really strange. The second thing would be to always make eye contact with the camera and stop looking at the audience while you're speaking. Because while it might make sense for you to make that eye contact, what's really happening in the photos, and even if there were no photos, you're looking straight down, and it just feels a little off-putting. So the key would be to always look at that green dot on your screen, or whatever color, or look into the lens, depending if you're using a professional camera outside of the built-in one. And another one would be to, don't overdo your background if that's not who you are. Do not put on a show. If you have an office that is completely cluttered and it looks absolutely insane and you don't want to necessarily shoot in that or show that, you don't have to buy all this rigging and do something crazy. Just move your laptop to a different room and shoot against the clean wall. It's really about, it's if you're comfortable and you want to invest, go right ahead. If it works with your brand and how you present yourself, knock yourself out. I've seen some of the most amazing home studios ever. It's crazy. But if you try to overdo it and you don't know what you're doing, it's going to look like a dumpster fire. And you're better off just shooting against the plain wall with decent light on your face so that you don't have crazy shadows, and there's no crazy shadows on the back wall, because the whole goal of any set is to eliminate all the distractions so that all of the attention goes to you because you're the one that's speaking.
As you were going through that, I was thinking of my backdrops, and some are complex, a lot of stuff going on, and others are extraordinarily simple. One was just a white brick wall behind me, and people commented I looked like I was in a prison cell.
Yeah.
And actually and they kind of laughed at that. And I said, well, Zoom is a little bit like a Turkish prison visit anyway, because you're sitting on the other side of the plexiglass thing, and we're all, saying, oh, I wish we could be together. So,
yeah.
But I like that idea of really the attention needs to be on you. Now, there are programs, software you you can get out there, of course, that enables you to have lower thirds and your logo pop up and do these seamless transitions from you to your slides. What is your thought on that?
I'm for it. I'm not against it, because the thing about that is that's adding production value. At the end of the day, my natural inclination would be to go towards the higher end look, because that is my background in what I do. And essentially everybody who does Zoom presentations with high end backgrounds is what I did for 9 years on that show. So I'm for it. But again, it's about not forcing it if you don't want to put in the time to actually know how to put all of that stuff together in a cohesive way. If you just throw lower thirds up and it's very sloppy and it feels disjointed from your actual messaging, it's going to take away from the juice of why these people are really there, which is to hear what you have to say and learn something. So it always has to play nice together, and you have to be willing to put the work in to make it all work well together.
Yeah, to make it, because look, we are all basically producing amateur live TV.
That's right. That's right.
You know, I have definitely deferred to less is more. I've tried the lower thirds. I've tried the logo popping up in the transitions, and it's probably, John, that I'm not yet experienced enough on it to really feel comfortable with it. And because we moved into a home up in northern Arizona, I'm still dealing with internet challenges. So I go into Flagstaff and use that. And I'm like, you know what? I don't need any more challenges. I just need a good, clean pipe. I've got a terrific deck, very well branded. And I'm with you. I'm of the belief people are coming for the content. And so I just stay really content focused without a lot of whistles and bells.
Well, here's the thing with that. If you, as the producer of this program, essentially, that you're doing, in addition to being the talent for this thing, somewhere a couple of balls are going to get dropped if you're not 100% on target. You know what I'm saying? And then once that happens, the thing that they're there for they're not going to get a full experience. So what's the point?
Yeah.
There's no point to that.
I totally agree. And so I am erring on the side of less is more at the moment. Although the creative in me loves the production value. I produced a whole ton of corporate video back in the day. I mean, hours and days of it. And I got to sit with really good producers and editors and learned a lot in that process. And I think I'm a little bit more like, I know how difficult it is to make it look good, and I'm just not going to try to bumble through it. I'm just going to go back and give them my content the way it is.
And that's exactly what you need to do, because, when you start getting into editing and you're getting into adding music and transitions and pacing out the words and cutting out the fat and figuring out what's going to work and moving this soundbite to that soundbite and what B-roll do I have to cover it. Here's the thing. I'm burned out from it. But if I don't have to do all the work and I could do a little bit of it, I'm totally in, because, that's still my baby. I remember those days. It's not all bad. There's some awesomeness to being able to create this magical kind of couple-minute piece that's going to captivate someone, bring them up and down the roller coaster, and get them into some kind of a new perspective at the end of it. I love that part.
Yeah. Our son, Parker, graduated from Chapman Film School, and he's been in Hollywood the last 10 years, and he works in virtual reality, augmented reality.
Ooh.
And he goes, God, Dad, finally I've gotten to the point that I'm just hired to come in, creative direct, and direct the production, and I don't have to sit through the edits anymore. They'll call me every now and again about what about this, what about that, and I get to look at it when it's all said and done to go in and tweak it. But like you, he said, it's so nice not to have to sit through that.
It is. It's a lot of digging ditches when you're working in video. There's a lot before you could start putting in all the nice stuff. So. Yeah.
Well, let's talk now about your work and give us some more ideas on what kind of imagery, what should we be thinking about if we're going to reach out to you and have you come in and shoot us, or if we're just going to try to grab some of our own photography because our COVID budget only allows that for the time being. What should we be thinking about that does the best job of capturing who we are and what we uniquely bring to the world?
The types of photos that work well, as I mentioned earlier, are the photos that really reveal what your day to day looks like, top to bottom. Now, that doesn't mean you have to share everything, but my point being is that when you show people what your work environment looks like, where you're brainstorming ideas, thinking to yourself, getting on the phone with a client, or if you're working through it them virtually, show your audience what that looks like. And not only show them what it looks like, but show the range of what those conversations look like in terms of the emotional sentiment, again, through the facial expression and the body language, and really give them that opportunity to enter into your life. It gives them permission to ask questions, to engage your content, to be able to start to build that relationship. Because once you build the relationship and you create that connection, you can nurture that along the line. Obviously, some people take longer than others because the need for what you do isn't prevalent in their life at that moment. But you are now top of mind, and you are now someone that they look forward to following online. And eventually that'll build enough trust so that then when their need arises, they know who to call.
So it's pulling back that curtain and
Yeah.
demonstrating who you are, how you go about it, regardless of what your office or studio or whatever looks like. It doesn't have to look like $100,000 Hollywood production facility. It's just whatever you got going that's working for you.
Yeah, you don't have to put on a show. I mean, the people that I serve are in the business of transformation in some shape, form, or flavor, right? And a lot of the way that, you kind of connect with people is through being honest with them and showing them what your life looks like. Now, does that mean I shoot everybody in their homes and it looks great? No, that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes we'll shoot in a co-working space, or we'll shoot in a hotel, or wherever the case may be. But the reality is that you want to be able to give them that slice of your life so that you become not just the superhuman superhero on a stage in front of all these people, or you're in front of the room facilitating a big workshop. Like, you need that, because that helps establish your authority in the sense of showing them what it looks like when you're at your best. But when you complement that with images that are more relatable, maybe a little more vulnerable, you're thinking to yourself, and it's something that's not necessarily amazing that happened, but you're reflecting and you're very pensive. We want to show that emotional range from being vulnerable all the way up to being victorious and everything in between. Because those are the stories that you share with your audience. You don't just share sunshine and rainbows all day. And as a result, your photos need to reflect those stories.
Sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
I've been doing this show for 6 years, 300 and some odd episodes, and it's been a lot of work. And I got a beautiful studio dialed in here in Phoenix, and the Shure mic. I mean, I just had everything working for me. And of course, then we got the wild hair and built our home up in northern Arizona. And I've had challenges ever since moving up there. And one of my biggest concerns, John, was like the quality of my audio right here is not what it used to be until I can get my internet and all that really dialed up. So literally, I do shows from a storage room in a gym that trains high altitude runners and rock climbers up in Flagstaff, that is owned
Wow.
by my niece and her husband, Ryan. And that has its own quality to it. I was in Vegas a week and a half ago interviewing an international casino consultant in a little room there. I'm here with you today in my conference room in our office we own down in Phoenix, and it's still not the best audio quality, and I get weird stuff happening. Thank goodness I've got a wonderful producer in our son, Caden Howell, that produces a show for me, so he cleans it up. But I guess because I feel a little bit guilty about not bringing pristine audio, that I kind of want to let people know, like, this is the best I can do. The show's got to go on. I'm not in my great studio, but I wanted to bring you, John, today and others.
Now, what you just said there is exactly why you need to show it, because it's a vulnerable moment and it is extremely relatable to every single person that follows you. And guess what? They're grateful because they want to hear the value you provide them through these conversations. So as a result, You got to get the photos of being in these places that look cool. And how unique is that?
I just took a picture of you saying that right now. It's going to be in the show notes and I'll pre-promote it, but this is what I'm dealing with. It's a cool conference room, but it's echoey as shit. So, Kate, you're going to have to do your work to clean me up here.
You know what, though? Wrinkles and all. Actually, speaking of wrinkles, you just brought this up. It's a non sequitur, but related to a certain extent. I have a lot of clients who, both male and female, but a lot of female clients who, can you take 20 years off of the wrinkles? Can you make me lose 30 pounds? Can you just make me da, 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 da? I'm like, listen, I'm not an angel coming down from the heavens, tap you on the head, and all this magic's gonna happen. But you are gonna walk into a room with all of the people that you serve. And if you do not look like the person that you are in those photos, a lot of them are going to start second guessing whether or not they want to listen to what you have to say. Because if you're hiding behind that, what else are you hiding? Maybe nothing, may totally be a vanity thing, but it doesn't matter because in the minds of those you serve, you got them thinking. So my answer to that is own who you are, own the way you do your thing, and don't apologize ever for it because it's what makes you, you. And that's what we want to show.
Well, that's awesome because I am a huge believer that the show must go on
Absolutely.
regardless of what you're up
That's
against.
Right. That's right.
I mean, that's business. That's what we do. And you talk about being in helping folks like myself, or we are in the world, the business of transforming people. I do it through storytelling, through teaching the ABT and so forth. And it's really important for me to be able to reach as many people as possible. But I will tell you too, John, and I'm probably like all of your customers, sometimes you're a little bit fearful about showing the wrinkle side of things. And like, I'm supposed to look great and sound great and always be great when that's just not life.
Well, the truth about that is we're never going to lose that feeling. We're human beings. This is a part of the deal. I mean, in my own life, for the first 25 years, I was over 300 pounds. And now, I don't know, I'm down somewhere in the 170s or whatever. But when I was overweight, when I was younger, it affected me in ways where I would run away from the camera. I would be embarrassingly obnoxious about not being in photos. And I look back at that time now and I regret it because there's chunks of years that don't exist in photos. And, I'm a huge photo person and I wish I had not done that. And that is why I am so steadfast in pointing out to people that, listen, it will always be a balance between your vanity issues and the value that these photos can offer your business in order to be discovered by those that you serve. And you always have to balance it. Now, when I shoot with clients, I don't intentionally try to shoot and make them look crappy. I don't. I mean, flattery is always a part of the game. But one of the most important things to keep in mind is that flattery is not the objective. It is merely a prerequisite. But there's other aspects to it. These photos have to be revealing and inspiring and relatable. You have to have some meat on the bone and not just look good. So that's kind of how I try to talk to people about their hesitation and apprehension with being in front of the camera. And then I just make them laugh and say a lot of crazy stuff. And the next thing you know, their guard is dropped and we're fine. But it takes time. And that takes to you have to build that rapport with the photographer and the client. And that's why it's important to know before you hire a photographer whether or not that rapport exists or if it's not a fit. If it's not a fit, you have to find someone else because it will affect your photos.
Absolutely. And you are in the storytelling business by capturing that moment in that person's life that reveals who they are inside, even though you're capturing their exterior. And that's got to be really hard to do. I mean, when you are interviewing folks, what do you ask? Are you looking, is this a funny person? Is this a serious person? Do you try to take the serious person and maybe, get them to chill out a little bit to capture that innocence inside them? Or how do you go about that?
Well, it's during it's during the first time I ever talk with them, whether or not we're talking about photos or otherwise. Figuring out their personality traits is more of the subtext of what I'm actually talking to them about. It's more, you know, the nuts and bolts during the conversation. During a strategy call, for example, I'm not asking them if they're a funny person. I'm listening to how they respond to me. I'm listening to how, they answer these questions, the tone, the style, all of those things I'm taking mental notes on while writing down the nuts and bolts and the actual stuff that we're going to be photographing. And then I'm also then testing them with respect to my personality, inject some of my humor, because my humor can go all over the place, and I could say some things that some people might not necessarily like. So as a result, I dip my toe in and I see what they react to. And one of the things that I've noticed is that qualification is a two-way street, not a one-way street. Because sometimes what I'll notice is that while they may love the work that I do, I know that based on their personality and whatever walls or apprehension or just the way that they naturally are, is not going to resonate, uh, or my style will not resonate with that once we have the camera out and we're doing the business. So it's not a fit. But all of that intelligence is gathered when I'm talking to people.
Yeah. So just in our conversation here, and this is going to be a totally vanity question, what do you read in me? Because here our listeners don't really know that we're seeing each other. We're on Squadcast here, even though they're just hearing it. So can you, just in having conversations with, like this, be able to kind of pull out what that person is about?
Well, number one, you smile big, so you're going to be easy to get with that. That's easy. Number two, you cursed a couple times, so that already lets me know that I can let it fly a little bit, which is going to help bring that smile out and get you centered and grounded. And I mean, I'm digging the eyes. I want to get in there, get some close-ups. We got that go, like on a pure vanity level. I like that. What else? I generally think, based on our conversation, that we will have no problem with rapport because we haven't had a moment of breath where we haven't said anything. So those things already within the half hour we've been talking, I've kind of pulled together.
Yeah. And I asked that question not just for my own vanity, but for the listeners to think about when you are interviewing customers, you are trying to understand a product or service they're offering. I think a lot of the things that John is talking about here, you can use. Asking the right questions and then not making it about you, just sit back and listen. And I guess, in the interview process here too, I like to poke and prod and kind of see where is my guest going to go here. But there's a lot of value in what you do that we could all use when we're really trying to understand the story of that individual sitting across from us.
Absolutely. It's coming. Listen, the people that I serve have some complex aspects to their business. They're writing books, they have workshops, they have online courses, they fly here, they consult there, they're doing virtual meetings. I mean, it have podcasts, on and on and on and on. And when you're trying to find out all of these things, you have to ask questions that really dive into that, because each of those things are, and they're not silos. Nothing is a silo. They all work within each other because they're all coming from the same person. So as a result, you have to have a laundry list of questions in order to really parse out the nitty gritty, because it's the nitty gritty and the details that we want to capture, because that's the stuff that's going to inspire people to stop the scroll. When you got this really high end, full of artistry, well composed, interesting shot with the person in the image, compelling expression, drawing everybody in, it's a lot of work. But if you do the legwork the right way, you're able to put all that stuff together and make sure you nail it.
Yeah. Well, tell us, John, about your service. What does that look like? What do people get from you when they bring you in to capture their story?
Well, the first question is, where are they with what they're trying to do? Like, what's the objective here? Are we doing a full-blown overhaul? Are we just hyper-targeting? Do you just need virtual, or do you need book photography? I work with authors and I photograph their books without them. Or it's, do you need a live event, or are we talking about portraits? And then what we go from there is just kind of go through the questions and I kind of dive a little deeper. I want to know where they're going to use these photos, for how long. How long are they promoting something now? Need to go for a long time? Is it a short time thing? All of these questions are asked in order to figure out exactly how much time they need with me and what exactly we're shooting and where we're shooting it. Because then that's another thing. Am I flying to you? Are you flying to New York City? Are we meeting in the middle? What makes sense based on your answers and what your goals are with your photos, with your marketing? So it's all kind of thrown into a pot. We heat it up, stir it around, and eventually, you got something to eat at the end.
Well, and now that we're getting hopefully through COVID, you, I guess, are back on the road or can be back on the road and do in-person shoots where you haven't been able to do that for last year.
Yeah, I did it a little bit at the end of last year in very small doses and very in short trips. But yeah, I am looking very much forward to live events and portraits out in the field, on the road, in interesting places, capturing people's magic.
To get out of your Astoria, Brooklyn apartment, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
Or Queens. I'm sorry. I totally blew that, didn't I?
Yeah, that's all right. I was going to actually let you go with that one, but I appreciate the catch. My apartment has become an absolute studio in a way. Now, I've been photographing people in my apartment since I started like fooling around with this as a side thing. But in the way that I shoot now, I need to give my apartment a break from being on camera all the time.
Like you said earlier, it's probably the most photographed apartment backdrop in the transformation industry.
I mean, I've done about 190 of these things, Park. So yeah.
Well, where can people learn more about you?
People can learn more about me by going to my website, johndamato.com. I got a blog that you could sign up for that will share more information about persuasive visual stories and portraits and virtual and book photography and all of that good stuff. And it'll save you the trip to my website. You can just get it right to your email.
All right, let's make it really easy for them. Off the top of your head, 3 things we can all do right now to tell a more persuasive visual story about ourselves.
Pick a headshot where you're using across your profiles that look confident, approachable, and flattering. The second thing would be to become more consistent in the way that you roll out your image content so people don't second guess whether or not you exist or you're retired and you actually post stuff on a consistent basis. And the third one is to start thinking more critically about where the holes are in how you're presenting yourself right now. Are you really showing people how the sausage is made? And if you're not, start thinking about how you can solve that problem, whether it's by hiring a professional or start to think about creating more professional smartphone portraits on your own.
Awesome, man. I appreciate that. Taking
Absolutely.
Copious notes here, and it's all the stuff I got to do for myself. So thanks, John. I appreciate you being on the show.
Pleasure was all mine, my friend. Thank you.
Hey, and thank you all for listening to this edition. You know what to do. If you liked what you heard, number one, go and visit John over at johndamato.com. If you like what you heard, share this show with your friends, family, and colleagues. There's all kinds of tips in here that you can use as a storyteller to really get to the bottom of the story you're trying to tell on behalf of your customers, clients, and certainly yourself. If I can be of service to you, come on over to thebusinessofstory.com where I got tools, talent, techniques, tips to help you craft and tell compelling stories that sell. And until next Monday, when we will have another compelling story artist here like John, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks for listening.
Oh, shit. That was a great tagline. I really like that one. You really nailed it.